All right, let's now assess the ongoing crude oil theft issue in Nigeria. The federal government has stepped up its probe into the massive crude oil theft in the Niger Delta. It said the oil company was also working with security agencies and a private firm contracted to carry out pipeline surveillance in the oil-rich region. According to the federal government, oil theft through pipeline sabotage caused 98% of oil spill in the oil and gas sector across the country since June this year till date. In recent times, Niger Delta oil and gas host communities have called on the Group Managing Director of Nigerian National Petroleum Company, NNPC Limited, Melikiari, to stop oil theft, name and prosecute those behind the menace, or resign. Of course, we still have our guest in the studio to further analyze this issue. Now, let's look at these statistics saying that 90%, I saw a part of it that talked about 90% of oil in Nigeria being lost to this oil theft. This isn't the first time this will be talked about. I remember Tony Elumelu had raised this alarm, saying that 95%, he even mentioned 95% of Nigeria's crude oil is being lost to theft. What's your reaction to this?
In the first place, I don't think it's up to 95%.
Okay.
We're looking at the figures. On one hand, you are seeing our OPEC quota is about, though it staggers,
1.8 million.
let's say 1.7 or 1.8, at times 1.6 million barrels per day. And you tell the world that we are losing average of 437 barrels, 1,000 barrels of crude on daily basis. From the analysis given by Melikiari the other time, that between January and July, that we have lost about 10 billion US dollar, which is equivalent to 4.something trillion naira. So what I'm trying to say in essence is, you are looking at in the neighborhood of maybe 30%.
So you think the 95% is an exaggeration?
Of course.
How did you come to that conclusion? Because
what I'm saying now is
if you're using the OPEC quota to measure our capacity, you might not be, doing justice to it.
What I'm saying is this: if you say we are supposed to produce 1.7 million barrels per day, for instance, we end up producing 1.4. Arithmetic, based on arithmetic, you cannot see that is up to 95%.
So what I'm saying is,
you cannot say what we are judging is up to.
No, you are judging by the OPEC quota. What about what we are able, the potential we have to produce this oil? That's what we should be measuring it by. What if we have the capacity? As of 2005, we're producing 2.5 million barrels per day. So what if we look at the capacity, the potential we have to produce this oil, and compare that to what we are producing, not the OPEC quota?
No, we did not even produce more than the OPEC quota. You know why? Because the oil business is an international business.
Okay.
You must conform within the standard of OPEC, one, because if you produce, you go to sell, you sell it at the international level, at the international market. So we are not producing beyond OPEC quota.
OPEC gives quota according to the capacity of each country.
Because they want to regulate the market.
That's what I'm saying. So, for instance, back then in 2005, when we were producing as much as 2.5 million, the quota wasn't at 1.8. It was around that 2-point-something million. But because the production level has dropped, that's why OPEC quota also
no, what OPEC does is, if they look at the price, they look at the what the producing countries, what they are getting, and perhaps because of economic crisis, they want people to get more value for what they are selling. They will reduce what people are producing so that the price will go up at the international market. But look at the crisis in Russia, because perhaps the supply at the international level is dropping, they are likely going to give us more to produce. And because the scarcity is already created by that crisis, there is the demand for crude from other countries is increasing.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying that the premises which you're using to draw your conclusion are faulty.
No, it's not faulty. What I'm trying to say is, you are looking at it that we go
the capacity
that we beside OPEC quota that we can start producing.
No, I'm saying that we're looking at the capacity that Nigeria has.
When you talk of capacity, Nigeria as a nation do not produce. We leverage on the oil majors. What Nigeria does is this: Nigeria as a country through NNPC collects 60% across board from Shell, ExxonMobil, Chevron. If Nigeria, for instance, break Nigerian society into oil blocks, they ask oil companies to come and bid. By the time they bid, the money they pay from in that bidding process go to agent of government that has to do with this. I may not remember that now. But what I'm trying to say in essence is, by the time these oil companies are coming in, they come with their platform, with their equipment to invest. Nigerian government will stand aloof all this while. By the time they start producing, Nigerian government will start collecting 60% across board. And it is managed in such a way that they produce in line with our OPEC quota. And again, we do not have a reservoir where we save oil production to say that we are producing and keeping somewhere outside the OPEC quota.
I'm just saying that the resources are there.
Let's look at it. I understand, the arguments for and against in terms of capacity as against what is obtainable in terms of production. But for a nation where we are even finding it difficult to really account for how much we produce, how much we consume, how do we even have, actual figures? Yes, maybe 95%, 98% is a bit flattering, but you look at it, it looks like the at least a majority of our, crude oil is being stolen. And when I say majority, it may not be overwhelming, like a 95%, but 51% at least. So
you
the
don't
question
take away
is
the argument that crude is not being stolen. You don't take that away. But the issue is, what we are looking at is the government giving out the security of the waterway of the facility to a company. I think the bottom line is, yes, oil crude is being stolen. And even the government personalities, they are all involved in the shady deeds. For me,
that's an indictment.
It's not an indictment from me, because go and look at even the governor of Rivers State one time. He questioned even the Civil Defense Corps.
We've even seen Pengansan and oil workers saying that they would stop production because they feel that the soldiers who are supposed to monitor the oil or the pipelines are also involved in the theft.
At one point in time or the other, they have all been accused. That is why personally, I think I like what Tantita Security Services is doing. Because
although that's also questionable, the fact that you hand over this surveillance to an ex-militant.
No, don't look at it from that angle. Don't look at it from that angle. You look at it from the angle of, does the security company have the capacity? I'm coming.
Another question.
Because if you look at it, this is a company incorporated in Nigeria. Don't forget that this same administration awarded a contract of $195 million to an Israeli company to acquire some security equipment, train Nigerian security personnel, and maybe eventually hand those things over to Nigerian security personnel to take off from there. But after that money would have been expended, what will you say is the situation in our waterways? Because that, I think then they were talking of holistically, it was not limited to the oil and gas industry. Both vessels coming in with other products into Nigerian water. So they were looking at the safety of Nigerian water generally. But having spent such amount, has the problem been solved? So we are looking at, don't look at it as if it's because Tompolo is behind the company. And if you look at it, Tompolo, as at the time he led MEND, we had the Aradua who granted amnesty to the militants. And between now and then, so between then and now, he have not gone back to crime. At every point in time, he has been availing himself of course, and he has been, anytime the government needs his services, he has always been there. For me, I think it's about capacity to deliver.
Let's look at it this way. Why is it that when Tantita Security Services came on board, we're now uncovering so many illegal pipelines and
many of them very conspicuous.
Many of them very conspicuous. Some of them maybe not, because we saw, you know, the act of digging and all of that, because the pipelines were underneath the, you know, the soil or even underneath the water. I'm coming. Why, as the Nigerian Navy and all other security services, you know, your NSCDC and the rest of them, who have been manned to, you know, manage these surveillances at the time, why didn't they uncover all of these, you know, heinous crimes over the years? Why is it happening now? Tantita got that contract sometime in June, July, and we've seen about 4 or 5 revelations now. So why did it take this long? Why didn't the security services uncover that, talking about, you know, our gallant men and women in the military?
The reason is not far-fetched.
Okay.
One, I talk about capacity ab initio.
Are you saying Nigerian military doesn't have capacity?
I'm coming. You see, Nigerian government, Nigerian Navy doesn't have the capacity to fight amphibious warfare. You saw that play out in the Civil War. Internally
or externally?
Internally.
Okay.
You saw it play out in the Civil War. They used Adakaboro to fight within that area.
But when Gambia, I'm sorry to interrupt, but when Gambia had its political crisis with Jammeh refusing to relinquish power in 2017, we sent a warship down to Gambia.
And the war was fought in the sea?
No, I'm just saying.
It was not fought in the sea. I'm coming. I want to draw your attention to another thing.
Okay.
Something else. Look at something in 2016 when there was threat of oil infrastructures in Niger Delta, particularly federal government fingered Avengers. And federal government mobilized about 100 gunboats to Niger Delta to confront the situation. It is surprising to know that ordinary fishermen, children, were rescuing Nigerian military personnel who were drowning in the sea, who could not navigate through the turbulent sea wave. I'm talking about capacity.
Okay.
Don't forget that even Mr. President alluded to the fact that these people who sabotage our oil infrastructure, that they deal with high tech. Mr. President was quoted to have said that as at that time. So what I'm trying to say in essence is Nigeria do not have that capacity to address it. And if you look at what Tompolo said the other time, that what they are merely doing is even providing the intelligence. Because if you look at, if you are conversant with the Creeks, it is not ordinary ground that you say because you have all the war armament, you confront your opponent. You have to move from creek to creek. At times you see small island, you move. So if you don't have what it takes to navigate through those, even Tompolo was saying that even himself or his team, that the criminals are cutting log of wood to barricade the routes, that they have to start using motor saw to clear the way. What I'm trying to say in essence is these people do not just do it without being armed. They know the terrain better than the armed forces, and they lay ambush for the armed forces. And as the armed forces approach, you know how difficult it is to overcome an ambush. Now you have somebody who knows that terrain. I'm talking about Tompolo now.
Okay.
Who know it as much as the people who are sabotaging the oil infrastructure.
Yeah.
So I think, for me, it's all about capacity. Because except I will be proven otherwise, Nigerian security agencies doesn't have the capacity to fight amphibious warfare.
Okay.
So
and for me, if you are giving Tantita Security Services Nigeria Limited that contract, it's a welcome development because it is an indigenous company. People are looking at it because Tompolo is behind it. What if it is not known to people who is the owner of the company and they had the capacity to deliver? Like I mentioned, the Israeli company that got that $195 million contract from the Nigerian government. Who questions who the owner of the company? Of course, it's not an Israeli government that owns the company. So for me, if an indigenous company has capacity to deliver on a job, why don't you give them the job?
You know, you just made a very huge statement. You said that Nigeria doesn't have the capacity to protect its oil resources. You said the Nigerian Navy, we have the NCDC, we have the all manner of security apparatus. watching over this pipeline and oil resources. You have just made a huge statement, a very indicting statement, that all of these people do not have the capacity to watch over or protect our oil resources, and that one man who was even on the EFCC watch list, who still has some questions to answer when it comes to crimes against the oil resources in the country, has the capacity, a non-state actor has the capacity to protect what the security apparatus do not have the capacity to protect. What are you implying?
I think let us correct one impression.
Okay.
Because at the last count, I'm aware that all the cases instituted against him in the law court have been quashed. So I don't think you have any question to answer.
It still has, with the EFCC, it still has questions to answer.
Except because as at the last count, the property the federal government was contending with him, I think the court have vindicated him. But whether that is not the issue now. The issue is, does the company have the capacity to deliver? And again, if that company do not belong to Tompolo, perhaps another Nigerian, and it has the capacity to deliver, do we start questioning the rationale behind giving the contract to that company?
So what capacity do they have that cannot be installed or instilled in the Nigeria security apparatus?
The capacity they have is the ability to fight amphibious warfare. Don't forget that when Yaradua did amnesty, his intention was to absorb some militants into Nigerian Navy. Unfortunately, he didn't live to do that. He died. Perhaps that was his vision. And the government that took after him did not see the same way he saw it. So it is a different thing to say whether okay, what would have been the situation if an American firm was the one giving this contract? Because we'll be paying them in dollar. The dollar that is scarce here, we still be equally be using it to pay for the services they will render.
All right,
but
so you have so much confidence in this company. You don't see any form of political...
No, it's not about confidence. It's about... I don't even know Tompolo as a person. It's about... Okay, let me give you an instance. I don't know whether you are conversant during the time of movement for emancipation of
Nigeria Delta, yeah.
Why didn't you ask before Tompolo surrendered arms? Why was it difficult for federal government, even as they deployed air raid to Baramatu, to different areas in the Niger Delta, bombarding everywhere? Why was it difficult for them to get him? If you look at the chunk of ammunition he surrendered, why was it difficult for them to get at him, recover those arms before he surrendered? It's about capacity. Because that terrain is difficult. I must tell you the truth.
Okay, let's bring this, back home now. These various illegal pipelines that have been uncovered, apparently they have been operated, by various folks, and there are names behind it. Yes, we're hearing the federal government has stepped up, its fight against oil theft by going ahead to prosecute some of these men. The question is, why are we not having the names out in public? That those who tell you that this same administration has also told us in time past, oh, we know the financiers of Boko Haram, we have the list and all of that. Yet we've not heard one single name. It's under the same administration. There was a live, plenary session, or a committee rather, hearing, and the next thing was honorable off your mic. So for all of this secrecy or, shrouding of names and all of that, when the cats should be let out of the bag, why should we believe that this time around the federal government is indeed set to prosecute or will prosecute the those behind this heinous crime? And
let's also throw in the mix the vessel that was burnt. It was nabbed, and then in the end we saw it getting burnt.
I think I'll be joining you to lend my voice to the call for federal government to name and shame the indicted or perhaps people who are alleged to be behind the illegal pipelines who are siphoning Nigerian crude. Because it baffles one when government will come and make bogus statements. At the end of the day, 1 year, 2 years down the line, they will not make good their threats to name who are people who are involved. Like the issue of sponsors of terrorism you mentioned. Then again, looking at the burning of the vessel, for me, I think it's unfortunate. Because you have a situation where somebody stole your products. You apprehend the vessel. Your product that is stolen is still in that vessel. Was it not proper for you to even arrest the vessel for the purpose of recovering your product and prosecuting? Yes, investigating and prosecuting anybody that may be found wanting. So I'm as worried as you are that perhaps they have something to hide. Otherwise, there's no point setting that vessel ablaze.
The environmental degradation that even leads to,
because all spillage, you know, within that community. Remember, again,
it will interest you to know that you just mentioned environmental degradation. Ogoni is perhaps the most polluted place in the world.
Yes.
And to clean Ogoni, you are looking at about 25 years with some reasonable billions of naira.
Yes, it was initiated. Yeah, about 5 years ago.
It's politics. Almost 7 years after the move to clean up Ogoni, the federal government is not forthcoming in doing anything.
Okay. Let's look at this now. You know, the essence of, I don't want to believe that the essence of giving 4 billion naira monthly to Tantita Security Services is just to prevent, you know, futuristic attacks on the oil facilities. You know, I want to believe that it's to, one, you know, do that, then two, look at, you know, the various diversions and look at how we can recover all of those things, prosecute. You know, it has to be holistic, all encompassing. Now, if for all of the good works that Tantita is doing in terms of discovering, uncovering, you know, various sabotage and saboteurs and all of that of these pipelines, if the federal government is not prosecuting those behind it, where does this leave us? Isn't it more like, you know, just an effort in vain, because it still doesn't change anything? Exactly.
I think it requires willpower, political will.
I mean, what will do you want to have for that? If you are committing 4 billion monthly,
no. What I'm saying is this.
Okay.
Don't get me wrong.
Okay.
I'm talking about on the part of the federal government.
Okay.
Because for such level of crime to go on,
for years,
people who are involved must be people who have access to even the government. And it takes willpower, political will, to confront them. Because whether we like it or not, even Tompolo himself have accused his security agencies of being culpable. And even a governor of a state, I mean Wiki, could accuse National Civil Defense Corps of being culpable. So I think it has come to a level where Nigerians should use that as basis to question the integrity of those who are vying to lead this country come 2023 as a way of guiding them to decide who to vote for.
Okay.
Because if we are having people who will give us promises, at the end of the day, they don't have the willpower to take action. For me, it's a waste of time.
Exactly, and that's why I asked, I mean, to what end would this be? And the end justifies the means.
Exercise in futility. If federal government will end up not prosecuting those who will be indicted or those who will be arrested. Because what I think,
we don't even had an arrest.
No,
I'm talking about the 4 billion naira every month.
You are looking at the 4 billion. You are not looking at 10 billion every 7 months, which is the equivalent of 4.3 trillion. I mean 4.7 trillion every 7 months that federal government is losing. So the federal government is trying to prioritize. Do we continue losing 4.7 trillion every 7 months, or pay somebody 4 billion on monthly basis,
which is 28 billion.
Yeah, but what we are saying is, if eventually the 4 billion naira you're paying is only leading to exposure and
no, you are not getting it as it's still. You are looking at about 28 billion as against 4.7 trillion
within the same
period of 7 months. So federal government looking at, okay, if we now pay somebody about 28 billion and save
4.7 trillion,
4.7 trillion that is being filtered away through oil theft, that is worth it.
So now, it's a different my point. My point is, if we're paying this amount to the Tatina security outfit and we are only uncovering the pipelines, we are not prosecuting anybody, the oil theft is not stopping, it's not leading to more production in our output, it's just more like wasting the money.
No, you are not still getting it. Anyone that is discovered, you can see the pictorial evidence here and there. That line, illegal line, cannot be operational.
Okay.
Anyone that is discovered cannot continue operation. But what I'm not saying is sufficient to just discover and end it there. Get me right.
Okay.
The right thing is to get to the root, get those who are involved prosecuted. Let me tell you this. If you look at, you go and ask experts who are in the oil and gas industry, they'll tell you that from a flow station, once you compromise a line, the man who is at the flow station will know instantly because the pressure will reduce. You may not know the point at which it's compromised, but certainly you know that pressure has reduced. Yeah. It is not something is happening somewhere. So that would have ordinarily lead to surveillance and trace.
Okay.
But that's why I say that it must be in connivance with the high and mighty.
Okay, in wrapping up this conversation in about 30 seconds, what are the ways you think the federal government can address this? It's good work that, Tantata Security Services has done so far in terms of uncovering these pipelines. How do you think the federal government can go further to, improve on that, good work?
It's simple. The essence of law, prosecution, is to act as deterrent to others. By the time you prosecute those who are involved, who are alleged or who are the suspects, and court makes a pronouncement, whether I would like it or not, it will deter other people from going into the same crime. But by the time you give them a slap on the wrist and ask them to go, other people will go into the same crime. Okay. So the simple issue is let the federal government go beyond discovering these illegal pipelines, get to the perpetrators, get them prosecuted, and let the court make a pronouncement. And when a pronouncement is made, let federal government allow them, if there's a jail term, serve the jail term. Not recently, when we saw federal government, Mr. President, using the prerogative of mercy to pardon people who were convicted for anti-graft related issues. That, for me, is demoralizing the anti-graft agencies.
Thank you very much. It's a fine place to wrap up. That's Matthew Olukwe, Public Affairs Analyst, discussing with us about oil theft and the federal government's efforts to begin prosecution of those behind this heinous crime, which some have even termed as treason. We'll take a break now. When we return, we'll delve into more conversations for you. Please to stay with us.